30 years since the first ANZAC Day match. This game, I'm going to call it. It's going to be one for the ages. Let's look into it. Before we jump into it, this video couldn't be possible without the support of Swish. Swish, if you don't know, is a website where you can go onto there and get an AFL personality, a Collingwood personality, if you will. Josh, Nick, Scott, Jack Chris, Darcy Cameron, Steel Sidebottom, any of these players to send you a personalized video. Send one to Mother's Day, because Mother's Day is coming up. Send it to a Carlton supporter friend. Send it to your best friend, your brother, your sister. Use code Swoop for 10% off, or use the link down below. You get 10% off. You'll be helping support my channel, be helping Swish, and you get a really cool video from one of your favorite footy stars. So Swish, thank you so much. Now, let's talk about this Collingwood Essendon ANZAC Day game. I said at the top of the video, this is going to be one for the ages. Essendon go into this game with 3 wins in a row for the first time since 2019. We'll go into this game with 5 wins in a row. So these two teams are coming off a full head of steam. You only have to look at, last week's games where we absolutely demolished Brisbane, 52 points at the Gabba. And Essendon just snuck through against West Coast by 2 points after being down by 28 points. Now, you probably look at that West Coast game and you go, okay, Essendon should be easy beats, but we know from past experiences that whenever there's a game that we should win, our Collingwood should win this, we always don't, or it's always going to be difficult. So we cannot underestimate this Essendon side, because Essendon, Carlton, actually, just every single team plays their grand final against us, so they are going to want to come out firing. They're going to want to put another win on the board, especially, I guess they were a little bit embarrassed by West Coast to only beat a team that is probably one of the worst teams in the last, 10 years or so, collectively. I know they've won a flag within 10 years, but you kind of know what I'm saying. Let's just say the last 5 years then. To only beat them by 2 points, at Optus Stadium. So they're going to want to rectify that, but they do have some really, really big outs. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. So Essendon, for the most part, have been playing okay football. Their last 3 wins came against Port Adelaide by 12 points, Melbourne, who weren't flying at all, and then, of course, West Coast by 2 points. Now, Essendon are one of those teams where they should be kind of pushing for anywhere between 8th and 12th, but then, Brad Scott comes out and says they're probably in like a rebuild, so they've got, just a weird, they're in purgatory at the moment, so they would be perfect to knock off right now. And when you look at their team that beat West Coast were up by nearly 30 points in the second quarter, so they did do really well in that third quarter to peg it back. I think they kicked 5 goals in that third quarter to sort of peg back that margin, and then they kicked 2 goals in the last to win by 2 points. So they do have that resilience there. What's not going to work in their favour, though, is Sam Draper has gone down with what looks like an Achilles injury, so he won't play. Nick Bryan, a couple of weeks ago, went down with an ACL injury, so he's another ruckman that won't play. So they're going to have to bring back Todd Goldstein with Peter Wright chopping in and out of the ruck. So that's going to be really, really interesting. That's where Collingwood could get out on top. You would have heard from my chat with Brodie Holland where that could go 2 ways. Collingwood could say, okay, we're going to leave Darcy Cameron and Mason Cox in the side and absolutely just work Todd Goldstein to the bone, the 35, 36-year-old, one of the best ruckmen that the AFL world has ever seen, but, hasn't played a game. They reckon he's in elite condition, but still hasn't played a game, doing more of a ruck coaching role. So could those guys work in tandem to do what they did to Big O last week against Brisbane? Or do they sort of go, okay, Darcy Cameron by himself and maybe with some hitouts with McStay, we should be able to look after Peter Wright and Todd Goldstein, bring back in memory or give a debut to Charlie West. We'll talk a little bit about the side a little bit later. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. I think that's a really big advantage for us because against West Coast, and I know it is against West Coast, but Essendon absolutely dominated in clearances. I think they were like plus 15 or something. And then that's when they get their dominance in that third quarter. And that's how they go on to win that game. other than that, everything else was pretty even. West Coast had more inside 50s. West Coast, if they were not a team half full of youngsters, they probably could have gone on and won that game if they had a little bit more of senior heads there. So Essendon will probably just want to bank those points and then just leave, kind of like what we did against Footscray. Bank the points, get out of there as quickly as you can, and then recalibrate for next week. So I think Essendon are very vulnerable, especially with no Sam Draper, because Drapes eats us up whenever he plays. It's usually Drapes and Stringer, so now they've obviously got no Stringer, but they do have Draper, but not anymore, unfortunately, for them. So we do wish him all the best in his recovery, but they still have the likes of Zach Merritt. Setterfield had like 9 or something tackles on the weekend, so he's one you got to watch out for. Elijah Hewitt had his best game. Nick Martin as well. Dursma might not play. Their winger might not play. He was got taken to hospital because he got a knee in the abdomen. So there's, it's touch and go as to whether he might play or not. Now, looking at the Pies and how we sort of go in and win this game, we did well these last 2 weeks against Sydney and Brisbane. We've won all quarters. So we won 8 quarters of football back to back. We've done that by blocking up the corridor, not letting them push through that corridor. I think we're going to do a lot more of that going forward. Essendon, I can't say I've watched a lot of Essendon games, but I know they don't tend to go up the corridor as much as a Brisbane and a Sydney will. But if you watch that West Coast game, they were just capitalizing with West Coast pressure, especially their forward 50 pressure. West Coast had so many tackles inside forward 50. They won the tackle count, and we know that the pressure Pies are absolutely back. So if we're to win this game, our pressure has to be through the roof. Now, we showed a lot of it against Brisbane and against Sydney. Tackle count wasn't that up against Brisbane, mainly because we had the ball most of the time, and Brisbane were playing a chip and mark sort of style of football. But if we can get Essendon on the turnover, they're not that efficient with ball in hand at all. So if we can get them on the turnover, our speed through the middle, and our run and carry, our pressure leading from the defense and our forward 50 pressure, we should be able to absolutely tear Essendon to shreds. The one thing about Essendon is, and where we can sort of get on top of them, is that they can't rebound from 50. They're ranked 16th of 18 teams rebounding from 50. So rebounding isn't their shtick, right? So we can absolutely capitalize on just nullifying. If we know they're not going to be rebounding and counterattacking like that, our pressure is going to have to be absolutely elite to just stop them from their sort of run and handball game, because they're second in disposals per game in the entire league. So they do possess the ball a lot, but when you've got that pressure and that perceived pressure, like what Brisbane had, because we closed down that corridor and Brisbane couldn't go into there, they were looking at which way they were going. They were chipping it around. It was making our players zone up really well and sway with that zone. We only let in 53 points against the Lions, and I dare say that's what we'll be looking at. Keeping Essendon to under 65 points, even under 60 points, would be an absolutely huge win. One person to look out for, though, is definitely, we talked about Zach Merritt and Setterfield and all these players, but Peter Wright. Kicked 6 goals in his return game. Hadn't played a game this season, comes back in, kicks 6 goals, which is more than 50% of Essendon's goals against the Eagles. That's why they go on and win. So Frampton does have a big day cut out for him, because we know that Darcy Moore is not going to line up on their best forward, because that's not what Darcy Moore does. He runs off their second or third best forward, like we saw with like Lewis Young and who did he play on against Brisbane? I can't remember who he played on against Brisbane, but it wasn't like Hipwood or anything like that from memory. So Frampton is going to have his work cut out for him. But if we've seen anything from Frampton these last 2 weeks, is that when he has one goal of nullify opponent, he does that very, very well. So I have no doubt that, Bright probably kicks 2 or 3 goals, because he is, 2-meter Peter. But that's why when Darcy Cameron isn't rucking and he pushes back, and they do sort of get that break, Essendon, and Darcy Cameron can sort of stay under that pack and mark that ball. That's how we've been working so well defensively and keeping teams to under 60 points. So my big call and prediction. So my big call is going to be who wins the ANZAC Day medal. I think Nick Daicos wins the medal again, but I want to give it to a player now that maybe a smoky. Let's say, you know what? let's go. Dan Houston comes back and absolutely dominates, and we'll say Dan Houston for a smoky, but I think it'll definitely be Nick Daicos. Prediction wise, if we're not winning this game by 30 plus points, you know, if we put 52 points against Brisbane, we should be beating Essendon by at least 40 points on ANZAC Day. Now, ANZAC Day in and of itself, very, very special. Privileged to be able to play on this big occasion. Privileged to, you know, go there and watch it. Second only to a grand final this game. So it's, you know, thank you to everyone that served in the military and is still serving. And, you know, we wouldn't be, you know, walking and doing this, you know, without the sacrifices that everyone sort of made, especially on that ANZAC Day in Gallipoli. So thank you so much to the servicemen and women out there and who are still servicing this country. It does mean a lot. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shackers, I'll swoop you later.